So I quit a six-figure job, which sounds pretty crazy, with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and put it all on the line and started what was then called Wilt Public Relations from my home in a home office with about $6,000 in stocks that I cashed in to buy a computer, a printer, and a desk.
For lack of a better term, it's pretty ballsy. It was 15 years ago. If you do the math, that's 2008. As many of us know, we're in the middle of an economic recession. Things weren't looking too good. Why would you take a leap at that point?
Well, we were not in a recession on September 19th, 2008, but we were in a recession about 2 weeks after that. So I do remember sitting thinking, what have I done? Why did I take this leap? This might have been the worst decision of my life.
What happens when a farm girl with a lifelong passion for biology, science, and communication decides to step out of the comfort of being employed by others to start her own agency? During an economic recession, nonetheless. In our first ever podcast, we're shooting the shift with the boss of Shiftology Communication, Melanie Wilt, to learn the story behind her business, the unique philosophy that guides the company's work, and what it's taken for her to make it work for 15 years and beyond. That's all ahead in today's episode of Shooting the Shift. Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Shooting the Shift, a venture here at Shiftology Communication where our team of marketing and communication professionals take time to reflect, share, and provide insights into what we do every day to help our clients reach more, convince more, and win more. I'm Dan Toland, Director of Virtual Experiences here at Shiftology, and we're happy you've tuned into today's episode titled Shiftology 101. Welcome to the very first episode of Shooting the Shift. And we thought, while planning our podcast, there's no better way to get started than interviewing the boss right from the start and talking about the history of Shiftology. Just who the heck are we? So I'm joined today by our boss, our CEO at Shiftology, Melanie Wilt, and also Cassie Jo Arend, our agricultural account manager. So welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us and getting the program started.
Oh, I'm excited that we've moved into the 21st century and we're podcasting now. This is fun.
We thank you for joining and look forward to learning more about who Shiftology is, your role as a business owner, your experiences and thoughts, and your philosophies a little bit behind Shiftology Communication. So I want to start by introducing my co-host for the day, Cassie Jo Arend. Cassie, can you just give us a little bit of your background and your role at Shiftology?
Yeah, I am the agricultural account manager, so I work with ag accounts here at Shiftology for their communication and marketing needs. And I have about 16 years now of experience in agricultural communication, working with companies and farms to talk about what they do and get out there in the public.
And you've had your eye on Melanie and Shiftology for a while. You joined us a couple years back, so you have a nice background, I guess, in seeing how Shiftology has evolved over time. So we're excited to have your take and questions that you're going to ask Melanie as well. But let's turn it over to the boss, Melanie. Tell us a little bit about your background, what your passions are, and what kind of got you started in agricultural communication.
Grew up on a farm. My dad's still a full-time farmer. I grew up showing steers, sheep, and pigs at the county fair through 4-H. So I, kind of did everything that 4-H had to offer, the camps, the state congress, National 4-H Congress, and it really expanded my horizons of what was available out there. I had a great biology teacher who assigned us a research project, and we had to study and research a science-based career. I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and I interviewed Tim Reeves, who was then editor of Ohio's Country Journal. I was really intrigued that there was a job out there that could allow me to talk or write about agriculture, but didn't require the heavy lifting. So I enrolled at Ohio State, took my first ag comm class at Ohio State, and I knew immediately that was the career for me, and I've never wavered on that. So that really was the start of me thinking about a career in agricultural communication, and it's led me to 15 years into a business that I love and cherish and continue to grow.
So basically you're an entrepreneur. And a super busy one at that. You also double as the county commissioner there in Clark County, Ohio. But you weren't always that person. Can you kind of take us down your career path? And at what point did you decide, hey, starting your own agency was kind of your destiny?
I started off right out of college working for the Ohio Florists Association. At the time, it was an international association for floriculture professionals, and I really enjoyed the start that I got there. I did some publications and media relations. We also hosted one of the 20 largest trade shows in Columbus, Ohio every year. And so that was a great experience, getting some time doing event planning and media relations and building relationships throughout the state of Ohio. Then I was recruited away to the Ohio Department of Agriculture and worked there in various roles. I started out as a public information officer, then moved into a position as the chief of markets. So working with the Ohio Proud program, the Ohio Grape Industries Committee. Then I moved back into the communication office and was the communication director, which essentially functions as the press secretary for the state director of agriculture. So that was the beginning of my agricultural communication career. I spent about 6 years at ODA in total and had my first child while I was there, and decided that while CJ was little, I wanted to work closer to home. So I took a job outside of agriculture working for a nonprofit jet engine incubator called Avitech. And that was not really my destiny. That was... It sounds really interesting. We did computer modeling and simulation for jet engine technology, and I learned a lot about high performance computing and aerospace, but it wasn't biology. And that's really what my passion is life science. So I worked there for a couple years, had my second child, Addie, and when she was about 6 months old, I decided to start my own agency. So I quit a 6-figure job, which sounds pretty crazy, with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and put it all on the line and started what was then called Wilt Public Relations from my home in a home office with about $6,000 in stocks that I cashed in to buy a computer, a printer, and a desk. And I took a contract that was about a third of what I was making at my full-time job, and had the family support and just did it and just started the business.
For lack of better terms, pretty ballsy. It was 15 years ago. If you do the math, that's 2008. As many of us know, we're in the middle of an economic recession. Things weren't looking too good. Why would you take a leap at that point?
Well, we were not in a recession on September 19th, 2008, but we were in a recession about 2 weeks after that. So I do remember sitting thinking, what have I done? Why did I take this leap? This might have been the worst decision of my life. But I do remember saying, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I'm like, well, I guess I could take a job somewhere else. But knowing that we were going into a recession, I just decided I'm going to manage this business as conservatively as I can. We're not going to spend money on things that we don't need to spend money on. We're going to work really hard to show our value and do things right. And I think actually starting a business in the midst of a recession was probably the best thing that I could have done, because it set up some really good habits that still are with us 15 years later.
So what would you give as advice to somebody else that's thinking about doing something like that? For you, I know a lot of it was your passion. How did your passion play into that? Because you can start a business to make money, and a lot of people do that, but you started it more out of a passion for what you are doing and for the businesses. So I guess talk a little bit about that.
Either you start with a love for what you do and just naturally you're like, well, I could do this and start a business. And that was kind of my take. Other entrepreneurs are business-oriented people who say, I want to start a business, and then they find a business to run. So I knew communication. I had an accreditation in public relations. I knew that I could communicate and help businesses achieve their goals through communication and marketing. I did not know the business side. I did not know, accounting and setting up a business and setting up a payroll and all of those things. So those were things that I learned along the way. The best advice I could give somebody is just have mentors who can help you through that. I developed mentors along the way, and wish that I probably had asked people earlier on who had been down the same path, but I really at the time didn't know anyone who had started a PR agency. I had never worked in an agency prior to starting my own. So there were a lot of things about timekeeping and billing and things like that that I had to learn along the way to become a really professional organization that also had the ability to communicate very effectively on behalf of their clients.
And you just started out as Wilt PR, and I always found it kind of interesting, working in it for agricultural business and organization. Wilt might not, in the literal sense of the term, be a really positive word, I guess, to use when you're thinking about crops and stuff like that. But you decided a number of years down the road to kind of go through a change there. And can you take us through some of the early days of the business before you decided about the rebrand? What was your main business? What ups and downs did you experience, and what were your thoughts during that time period, those first few years?
Both of my last names actually mean something agricultural. Flax is agricultural good that is spun into linen, and wilt is something you don't want to happen to your crops. So probably wasn't thinking as much about what went into that brand at the time. Had I spent the time doing things right, like we tell our clients to today, we probably would have come up with a different name at that time. Early on, I was in my farmhouse office. I did have an office where I could shut the door. And at that time, working from home was really unusual. But when you work from home, you can't stay focused, and you end up doing your laundry or doing the dishes. Well, I didn't do any of that stuff. I loved what I was doing in my office. So I would find myself, after getting dinner on the table, gravitating back to the office, and found that probably wasn't sustainable. I did have an intern after about a year. Sarah McInnes joined, and then I hired her full time. And at that point we went, okay, we really need a legitimate, real office space. So we moved to downtown Springfield into the Commerce Point building and set up an office there. And that was really the first thing that I think legitimized the business and said, this is something more than Melanie working from home with her kids and freelancing. This became, this is when we put a flag in the ground and said, this is a real business.
So you were a one-person show in your home office. You hired on an intern. Not to toot our own horns a little bit, but as you've grown over time, you've hired some pretty cool people.
Yeah.
There's 9 full-time employees now. So you've grown from this one room office, one woman show, all the way up to more of a full-scale marketing and PR type of firm. But, like I said, you didn't officially become Shiftology until about 2017. So why, after 9 years of business, getting established, putting that flag in the ground, we're legit now. Why was it time for a brand overhaul? What difference was that going to make?
This business was about more than Melanie. This business was about our clients, really, in that we had built a team that had some incredible skills and, a number of people who really had a feeling of ownership in the business. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that this was their business to help, to grow, to be successful through, not just mine. It was around the same time that I was running for public office too. And I wanted to just have that distinction, that it was something different, and that it was here to stay. This organization wouldn't be what it is at all without the blood, sweat, and tears that you guys have put into it. Previous employees that have been part of it, and those who are with us now that have just taken it to the next level. So it was really important for us to go through that process of rebranding. And we actually did what we tell our clients to do at that time. And we engaged an outside group to help us come through that process. And they took us through the process, helped us with our claims and getting the right messaging and value proposition down. And then it led us to the point where we came up with the name Shiftology. The focus through that branding process was that there's something special about the way we look at communication as a science-based profession. And Shiftology now means the science of change. So we made up a word that really, I think, serves us very well and has been a great brand that will live with us for a long time.
So you mentioned that Shiftology means the science of change. Can you talk a little bit about how we function as a company differently in the communication space, that we're really working with those science-based organizations and using science to communicate? So it's working with science in two different ways.
I geek out on science. I love biological life science, anything that has to do with life. So we work with agricultural firms, we work with healthcare, we work with education. And so in doing that, I've discovered along the way that people who really like technology and science are encouraged through science. So using communication, the science of communication, which is really the science of creating meaning, we're able to take those science-based principles, complex ideas, and boil them down to something that's really meaningful for people. So we apply that through our processes, and we actually start with research so that when somebody's making a decision about their communication, whether it's a magazine publication or a website, they're using data-driven decision making instead of just, oh, well, hey, this looks cute, this looks nice, it's artsy. That's not what it's about. It's about being able to know that you're going to make incremental change. So we base things on data-driven decision making, and it really makes us more certain about the outcome. I really think it's important to look at communication as a science-based practice, one where you can continue to grow and become infinitesimally better each day. We can continue to hone and improve communication as a science if we look at it that way, instead of looking at it as an art or something you're born with because you're a people person.
There's a lot of terms that we flow around that fly around under the banner of communication as an agency. So, a lot of times people say, well, what do you do? Well, I work for a marketing and public relations agency. But yeah, what do you do? What do you do? So can you, Melanie, what do we do?
Really what we do through the science of creating meaning is to clarify complicated concepts. So particularly those in agriculture, health, and education, we clarify those concepts to create meaningful connections. That's how we win, is if our clients are empowered to reach their stakeholders, convince them of their value, and then achieve those measurable business wins. One of the best ways that I've found to explain this to people is that take the ubiquitous Happy Meal. Everybody knows a Happy Meal at McDonald's. The marketing people are really about, how many Happy Meals can we sell? What's the right price point to sell those Happy Meals? And how many transactions can we generate over the course of a year? The public relations people are more about how do we build relationships with the kids, the parents, and convince those moms that they want to take their kid each time they do something good to get a Happy Meal, or every Saturday through their childhood to get a Happy Meal because they really believe in it. And I think that is a good way to see the difference between marketing and public relations.
So if somebody wants to come to us and say, what can you do for me? What would be like some of the more specific types of things that fall under that banner? What type of things do we do?
We call ourselves a full service firm. There are some things we do in-house, and there are some things that we do with partners. So it's a lot about storytelling and using a brain-based approach to tell the story of an organization. We do branding. We help organizations develop materials, collateral that will help to tell their story. But I think where we excel the most is developing a strategy that helps to do all of those things together in concert, in a streamlined process that allows the organization to continually put those messages out and make sure that they're connecting in a meaningful, relevant way with their stakeholders, whether those are patients or customers or people that we want to vote on an issue or feel a certain way about an issue, thinking about how all of the different pieces that come together as part of that plan. So there's no silver bullet, there's not just one approach, but we really try to understand what that challenge is, what's behind that challenge, and find a unique prescription for overcoming it by developing creative messaging, different tactics, and unique strategies that will help to accomplish that.
What type of culture have you built in Shiftology communication for both your employees and for your clients?
One of the things that I learned early on in this profession is that kindness really counts. And relationships are the premise of our business. The old style of, you got to be a bitch to get ahead if you're a woman just never worked for me. And we've really tried to make one of our core values is kindness as our favorite brand. And I really believe that developing relationships, lifelong relationships with our clients, with the industries that we work in are what really make us successful. We're only successful when our clients are successful. So if we don't do a good job, then that doesn't generally translate to client success. If we do a great job for the client, they're going to be successful. In turn, we're going to be successful. So it's not about us. It's about putting our clients first. And, I love these 9 people that work with me like family. And I think we've created a really flexible culture that everybody knows family comes first. And we've been through some things together. So you guys have been there for me through some things, and I've been there for you guys through some things. And, I'm sure that will continue as we continue to work together. But I can't imagine getting through the day-to-day of life and the work-life balance without this group of professionals that we've put together.
When we think about the people listening to this and something that they can get out of this, what are 3 things that you would say to anybody working on starting their own business or helping an entrepreneur in a small business? How can they help them, or what can they learn from you? What would you share with them?
Yeah, the first is just ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you take a risk, you take a chance and it doesn't work out, what's the worst thing that could happen? You go back to where you were. So you go back to the status quo and then you try another risk. The second I would say is just know your priorities. In my case, I'm a mother and have been a mother the entire time I have owned this business. My daughter is 15 this year as well as the business is 15. And I knew they were my priority from day one, and that hasn't changed. They've changed. They've changed a lot. But knowing your priorities really helps you stay focused, laser focused on what matters and what's important in life. And finally, I would say never stop learning. We are a business that's all about learning and curiosity and always asking questions. And if we stopped and thought that we knew everything, we would close up shop. It's a very important premise to communication work.
Like, what has changed the most when it comes to the work you've done, or how your company's been perceived, or how you want to be perceived in the next 15 years?
Well, what's probably changed the most is our approach to the work and the quality and depth of the work that we do. In the time that we've been in business with Shiftology, I've earned my accreditation in public relations. I've connected with others who are doing very similar work to me. I think we take a much more professional agency approach than we ever have before. And we're doing it with the best possible turnaround, the best possible quality. And I think something that's really unique about the way we approach things is this neuromarketing storytelling that's really a brain-based, data-driven model that is unique to communication agencies, to PR agencies. And I see that being part of what's really special about the organization that we've created here. And over the next 15 years, I think we're going to continue to hone our craft. We're going to continue to adopt new technology. We're going to adapt to the changes in the industries that we serve. And we're going to continue to be curious and learn. And that's what's going to keep us up to date and on top of things over the next 15 years.
I have a question for you, Cassie Jo, since you've joined in the past couple of years, talking about all this stuff. What was it, I guess, that attracted you to Shiftology and to be a part of this whole thing?
For me, I think the biggest piece was getting to help companies make a difference. That you're not just communicating. Everybody can talk, everybody can communicate in one way or another. But communicating effectively is not something that everyone can do. And helping businesses find those solutions, especially in the agricultural field, is something I'm really passionate about and I love doing. I also love learning. I get to work with all these different companies and learn about their businesses and see how, okay, well, they do this and they do this, but we have to do it differently because of the audience. But you know what? We can learn from one another and putting those pieces together. I love learning about the businesses, learning about different opportunities along the way. So it just keeps my brain always firing, and I think that makes it extra fun for me. I loved working on the corporate side of things, but this is definitely a change and something that I'm really passionate about, and I like helping people that want our help in a lot of ways.
Why Shiftology?
Melanie, quite honestly. Melanie's the reason. I've always admired her and looked up to her and gotten to watch her grow in her career. She was always that mentor to me. She was somebody I called when I was struggling through something like, hey, I don't know how to handle this. Can you help me out? She was that person I called. And so now it's really neat to be working with her as my boss and getting to really call her any day and say, hey, I'm really struggling. How do I figure this out? Or this is what I'm thinking. Am I right? Can I make sure that I am on the right path? And knowing that she knows those things, she's been through it all, and we can solve it together. I love that. And I have her support every step of the way. So that the culture we talked about earlier, all those pieces are really important. And I get to work with so many different people in a great company like this. I love all of the people I work with, which is something you don't find every day.
Kind of wrapping up here, and Melanie, let's say you got 30 seconds here. What's your value proposition, your elevator pitch? What do you want people to know about Shiftology Communication?
Well, we want to be the communication partner that brings about positive, meaningful change for not just the clients that we serve, but for the communities that they're in, the industries that they're in, and really help to dial in on taking those complex messages and simplifying them, finding a way to make them really connect in a relevant way to your stakeholders. And we're most successful when we can help our clients do that.
Cassie Jo, you have any final thoughts, questions before we wrap up?
I think the biggest thing that I would add is that one of the neat things about this podcast is that we talked about our passion. We talked about how passion started this business, and our team as a collective has that passion for what we do. And the fun part about this is now we get to share that with everybody else and hopefully give little takeaways every single time so that you learn something new and you have new things you can apply.
I love the idea that we're doing this, that we're talking back and forth, getting in front of each other, sharing our thoughts, sharing our history, sharing philosophies, things like that. I really think it goes a long way, not just to share all that information with other people, but to share it with each other as well. I think it's just really nice just to take a moment to step back, have these conversations on a regular basis, and just you learn more about each other as well. So it's really cool. We're looking forward to doing more of this in the future as well. So Melanie, do you have any other final thoughts? How can people learn more about you and Shiftology as well?
This is going to be a great way for us to connect with those that we work with and hopefully share some of that knowledge that we've gleaned over the years. In order for people to get in touch with Shiftology, go to shift-ology.com. It's shift-ology.com. And if you want to set up time with us, people give a half-hour discovery meeting to anybody that's interested in learning more about what we have to offer. And we will use that time to learn about their challenges, and they can email me at melanie@shift-ology.com.
Well, thank you. We'll be sure to share all those links wherever we post the podcast. So we ask everybody to watch for that, like it, follow it, all the things that you do with podcasts. Listen to us in the car, driving down the road, what have you. So Cassie Jo, Melanie, thank you both for being a part of this. We're looking forward to future conversations to come.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Cassie Jo.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on our very first episode of Shooting the Shift. Again, you can learn more about Melanie and Shiftology Communication at shift-ology.com, where you can get in contact with us to set up a free 30-minute discovery meeting to learn more about what we have to offer. You can also get in touch with us there to ask any questions that you'd like to see answered on a future podcast, provide topic ideas, and just let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback. On behalf of the entire gang here at Shiftology Communication, I'm Dan Tolan saying thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us on a future episode of Shooting the Shift.